There it
Exactly.
is. I told you. We are live. We are live. It worked, Tiffany. Can't
Yay.
believe we can make it work when Jason usually does this part. So, um, hey, Jason, we did it without you.
We're
Happy
here.
Tuesday. Here we are. Here we are. Tiffany,
Happy spring.
happy spring. I know the sun is shining in Pittsburgh.
hmm The daffodils are coming up.
They are. They're so cute.
hmm The birds
Oh,
are chirping. It feels good.
it does feel good. It feels,
hmm
it feels even better though, the fact that I get to talk to you this early in the morning.
I love it. I can't.
I love
It's
it
my
too.
honor.
The the honor is truly mine. Everybody, and I wanna say hi to Jean because I know you're already on. Hello, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time for Try New Tech, and we talk about AI an awful lot. That is our jam here. In fact, typically, Jason and I are unboxing AI tools to each other, where we surprise each other with something. But today I wanted to bring on my friend and powerhouse expert in AI adoption, Tiffany Prince. Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming. So we're missing Jason today because he's taking himself on vacation or something like that.
Got to be done sometimes.
It really does. But that's good because you know what it means? It means you and I have time to talk to what I think are the most important principles, and that is responsible AI use and
hmm
AI adoption. And I know you've worked with some pretty major companies, Tiffany,
Yeah.
through your company, Top of the Mountain Leadership, like Amgen and Northwestern. And so you've been around and you understand how enterprise organizations have challenges when it comes to AI adoption,
Yeah.
and I know you've got a few guiding principles, and I just want to open the floor and let you talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I like to say I kind of work at the intersection of leadership, technology, and teams because that's where the rubber hits the road. So, AI adoption from my perspective is all about the people side. How do people get on board? What are we doing? How do we overcome that resistance, the fear? We know there's a lot out there right now. So just because you buy that new shiny tech toy or introduce that into your organization does not mean that your employees are going to adopt it wholeheartedly. They probably the first thing think about is, am I going to have a job next week? Right?
Yeah.
So it's really important as leaders and executives, even more importantly, to put those guardrails in place, help have those conversations, help kind of describe why are we leveraging this technology now? And how do we overcome that through various conversations and helping them understand, and also through upskilling, reskilling, making sure people know how to leverage the technology. It's interesting because if you look at Gartner, McKinsey, all the big consulting firms are starting to kind of track the return on investment and those that are really having a good time adopting this, and it's appalling. 85% of AI implementation, digital transformations are failing. So that's actually worse than the prior wave of all those enterprise solutions, ERP, CRMs, LMS. You pick that name, the acronym, right? And we got it. That's
Yes.
what we did in the 90s and the aughts and the last 20, 30 years. And that's still, if you look at John Cotter's work around, change success, it was 30%, right? So 70% of organizations are failing, and it's even worse now. So 85% is not the way we want to do it. Why are we wasting that money when we can actually be doing it right? And I know every single time I talk to companies, it's because they worked with their IT folks, they put those processes in place, and then they thought about training at the 11th hour. Oh, yeah. And I guess we need to do training and communicate that to people. And then they wonder why people resist, don't adopt it, do workarounds. So let's stop the madness and let's do it right from the first, out of the gate. Bring people like myself, your HR folks, those that are front line with the people that will be impacted, and come up with a plan on how to communicate, how to train, how to get them ready and excited about using this technology.
That is such a tall order, Tiffany, when you consider and you reference the ERPs, the CRMs, and I know that companies have a hard time spending time and emotional energy on something as simple as a CRM implementation. I say simple sort of in jest, but
Mhm.
people are afraid to do that because they say, "Why are you bringing in this new technology when I do my job just fine?" Or you want me to learn something that I don't know how to use. And so even 15 years ago, we saw a lot of issue with that. And
Right.
now when we think about AI technology, asking organizations to adopt that, knowing that people now have an additional fear, which is this might take my job,
Yeah.
feels a little doom and gloomy. So what do we do, Tiffany? How do we get in here and solve this problem?
Yeah. It's just education and understanding because the media hypes up a lot of what's gonna happen. There will be impacts to jobs. I am not like a Pollyanna, okay? I think jobs will evolve. So I think the big injustice for people is to not jump in, not come to podcasts like yours to learn about the new tech and just be curious, start to learn, start to understand how these tools can help me do my work better. So I'll give you an instance. Last night I was prepping for a course. I decided to jump on Notebook LM. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with that. That's the first time I've gone on it, and I was blown away at how much more efficient I was with my time. I had an outline of my presentation. I uploaded that, and also ChatGPT created a reading list for me, which of course I validated to make sure all the links were correct or it's something I wanted to point to, but it was pretty spot on. So I loaded that up and then I had it create, a podcast for me that I could leverage as kind of a pre-assessment or introduction to what we're going to be learning. Mind blown. Mind blown. All within 30 minutes it took me. A 20-minute podcast produced out of what I uploaded in 2 minutes.
It's exceptional, and I think one of the things that's the most exciting about AI, and I love Notebook LM, I'm a huge fan of it, is it can really democratize learning. So it can allow people who wouldn't ordinarily have the time, the ability, the access to be
Mhm.
able to take very complex ideas and put it into a place where now you can learn it in 20 minutes, at least enough to be conversational and
Yeah.
become curious, which I love that you said. I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan, and every time I hear that, I'm like, "Yes." Uh, but when we think about this concept of, um, making sure that people can have that democracy when it comes to understanding, I think one of the principles that I have heard you speak about a lot, and I will tell everybody, if you have the opportunity to hear Tiffany speak, run, don't walk. She does such a good job of synthesizing really large concepts into understandable nuggets. But I know you talk a lot about cross-functional governance, and I think that's critical. So,
Yeah.
where are the challenges that you're seeing
Yeah.
with AI adoption there?
Yeah, just finding the right people to be on that governance/steering committee, right? Because you want to have all the voices and a diversity of voices in the room. But it's also, are there too many voices? So it's that sweet spot of who needs to be there, who are the right people, who can help guide us. So I like to also say we need to have, from an executive point of view, what is the business objective of implementing these technologies that gives us our North Star, that gives us our guardrails, because as things are evolving, and it's evolving every week, it's quick. New things are coming out, new ideas are popping up. So we need to make sure that we understand, does that fit into our cultural paradigm or is that kind of outside? So that kind of gets to that ethical piece that you talk about in our, work and how we're implementing it. Is that on the edge? Is that something we shouldn't really take on? Or does that fit within our cultural, perspective, what we're trying to do and meet our business objectives? So it kind of all those things tie together. That's why you said it's hard, but we have to keep all of these things in our minds as we are trying to move the ship. One of my CEOs that I work with at Amgen, he had that concept of the North Star, the ship out in the ocean. What we're trying to do is very crazy, but I'm pointing you in this direction, knowing that it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be like zigzag, right? And I love that analogy because I always think about that, especially from a change perspective, because yeah, in a perfect world, it would be a straight line, but we know we're all human. We have emotional reactions. We're trying to navigate these things and kind of deal with those things that come up for us personally, but also for, what's best for the organization and just trying to juggle all those things. So I thought that was a great analogy that, yeah, sometimes we're in a ship in the middle of the ocean. We're just trying to figure out how to get to that next port.
Yeah, and I think what you see here is there are some organizations that are doing AI for AI's sake. Everyone else is doing it. We think we should try it. Maybe there will be some operational efficiency. There's a looming economic slowdown. How do I, get the most for the least?
Mm,
But the organizations that have strategic AI roadmaps are the ones that do the best, and I know that's one of your 5 pillars. So talk to us a little bit about how do I develop one if I don't have one? What if I'm not an Amgen? How do I start? Where do I start from?
yeah, most of us aren't Amgen and have those resources, right?
Right.
But hey, we can learn from the thought leaders that are out there. So I'll tell you, when I worked at Amgen, we looked at the thought leaders around change management, the Cotters, the Bridges, the Lewins of the world, to figure out what from our culture makes sense for us to develop our change management proprietary method. There's no reason why we can't leverage those particular tools if you're small to mid-sized organization, because it still gives you the understanding of how humans go through change. And also, most of us have experienced grief in our lives, right? So if you think about that and if you kind of juxtapose those two things, a lot of times employees, it's really just that grieving, that letting go. That's what the Bridges model talks about, is we are emotional at the first forefront, right? So how do we take ourselves from that emotional reaction to say, I this no threat, move, fight or flight, to acceptance, logic, and understanding. And that we have to have those conversations as leaders to help people get through those pieces. And that's where the work is, right? You can't, again, flip that switch and go automatically, "Okay, we're rolling this out. Yay, everybody's gonna embrace it. It's gonna be fun." No, and people aren't there yet. You might have been having these conversations for 3 to 6 months, but your team hasn't. The rest of the organization hasn't. So you have to kind of understand they also need that time to reconcile it and go, "Okay, what does this mean for me? What tasks will be going away from my role? And what will I be able to do better that I never get to because I'm in this administrivia piece," right? I look at that. So HR is a great example. Is there's a lot of administrative tasks that they're burdened with to try to help the organization, but they want to be more strategic, but the time, you just don't have that time. So I feel like a lot of the onboarding or policies, those could all be potentially AI agents that help new people get on board, leveraging that technology that frees the HR folks up to do things that are developing people, helping to push the organization forward, more strategic in helping your employees do better.
I love that. You touched on so many critical points here. And, one is communication, making sure people know what you're up to. And I think that's one a lot of organizations forget, whether they are an Amgen or they are a teeny tiny company, the
Mhm.
framework will help them stick to it. So I think either borrowing somebody else's framework, one of the existing concepts that are coming out of one of the change grades, or starting
Mhm.
to modify it to fit your organization in a proprietary way is going to help those organizations as they think about how do we roll these things out and let our team know what's coming, because there is going to be transformational change and we'll see it in places like HR. We'll see it in places like onboarding. And I think it's one of those things we have to embrace. We're here, it's happening whether we want it or not. And as humans, we have to think about how it fits into our organization and I know that's one of your other 5 key pillars that I really love, and
Mhm.
I think everybody wants to hear a little bit more about what's in it for me, how will it impact me?
Mm,
So when we're thinking about human-centered AI,
yeah,
Tiffany, talk to us about how that should be coming into our concept of AI adoption.
yeah. So you bring up the what's in it for me. So again, I go back to, the leadership piece is understanding your team, understanding the departments and roles that will be impacted so that you can think about how you're going to communicate to those members of your team or the department. Part of my influence strategy is always about, what's a win for them, right? Because if we can't articulate that, how are they supposed to really see that as well, right? So we really need to think through that, and strategically just kind of thinking about, ethically, how are we rolling this out? So I'll give you a good example of like thing that's reconciling right now is many organizations are using AI to screen applications for jobs, right? Is there innate biases in the way that we're screening folks? Absolutely, because we're all humans. We do tend to bend towards certain profiles, correct? Ourselves included. So, how do we make sure that we're constantly thinking about that in a way that is more inclusive, that is not limiting our pool of job applicant potentials and opening up for that? So, from an ethical perspective, I think that is really, really important for us to think about.
I love that, and I went on mute because there are some things AI can't control, like the neighborhood car alarm. But
Yes.
there's an amazing, organization that came out of, Carnegie Mellon, which you and I both live close to, and it's called Ethics Coach, and they will come into an organization, they work a lot with startups to say, code inherently carries bias. Code is basically written by humans, and
Yeah.
we can't help it. Bias is just part of our, cellular, creation,
Mhm.
and they'll go into it and say,
Yeah.
we're looking to make sure that you're not carrying too much bias in here, but
Yeah.
critical. I'm so glad that you brought that up because we have to think about it all the time because bias is going to come into every part of it, from the development to the design to the
Mhm.
delivery, and that's something that we really have to think about when we're looking at new tools to acquire and implement in our organizations as well.
Right, right. And we all have our blind spots on, how we're looking at things. And again, that's why it's important to have a diversity of people in the room that can bring those perspectives that you may not have that lived experience, right? You may not have seen that perspective or understand that perspective. So it's really good to get that diversity in the room and give people that psychological safety to bring those things up too, right? So that all kind of goes back to trust.
It sure does, and I think, we're pulling into one of your final pillars, which is responsible AI use,
Mm,
and I think, having a base of trust in your organization, both internally and externally, is really critical, so making sure that you can stay focused on that trust level probably pulls into this pillar. Tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah. I find that that is one of the critical, well, the probably the highest critical success factor for organizations is the trust or lack of trust. So again, it is about your leaders. It's about building the psychological safety and being able to have people be able to have those feedback sessions. So another thing that I find that is important and key as we're implementing, testing, and having use cases within our organizations from AI adoption and how are we going to use it is, you know, what does that look like? How are we going to leverage that? And sometimes it's about how our culture is either risk adverse or open to taking some risks, which means sometimes we're going to try some things and it's not going to work. And that's okay. Right, so I like to look at, Peter Senge's model of, the continuing learning organization. I mean, that was in the end of the '90s, right? I learned that in my MBA program, and it was a nice concept, but I do actually think we're stepping into an age where it's going to be that kind of paradigm that keeps you competitive, that keeps you moving forward because, again, things are happening so quickly, new tools are coming out. The pace of change, the pace of technology is even faster than we ever thought or have ever experienced. So, having that responsible, use, have that trust, but also it's okay to test things out. So it's a new space, it's a new way of working, I believe. Then we're definitely moving away from that industrial age mindset of command and control. And let's face it, we're not factory workers anymore. We're not making widgets over and over and over again for a 12-hour shift. We are leveraging data, we're leveraging knowledge, we're leveraging content, most of us in our roles that we're talking to. And it's about taking that information and creating value out of it. So that's a different way of working, that's a different way of leading, and that's a different way that we're going to be moving forward. And that, I think that's why the human AI interaction is really important because yes, it can give us really interesting insights, but it's us humans that make that the magic happen out of that data, making sense, making the value, creating that strategic insight.
I love that so much, Tiffany. And I think that's a great place for us to wrap today because it is where humans are able to capitalize on AI. That is where the magic happens. And I think that's one of the things that we all are so excited about AI for. So, Tiffany, tell us, where can we find you? How can we get in touch with you? Because I know everybody is rushing at the pace of change to try out new AI tools. And I also know that working with you has been something that's been incredibly helpful for every organization that has been able to do that, thinking about strategy.
Yeah. Uh, you can go to my website, which is scrolling here, topofthemountainleadership.com, to find out some more about me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My tag is Tiff Prince, and I post there a lot. And if you're really interested in doing a quick AI organizational analysis assessment, kind of where you are in your kind of roadmap, I have an assessment as well. So feel free to reach out me, DM me, send an email to prince@topofthemountainleadership.com.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us today.
Thank
It was so nice for me to start out my Tuesday with you and everybody else who joined us live on LinkedIn or on YouTube. As always, we do save our new tech demos and conversations at our YouTube channel. So please make sure you're subscribed to it. Join us every Tuesday to see what's going to happen next. We never know. I am so pleased to have been able to join you today. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me. Have a great week.